I've been in the mood to play racing games recently. Starting with gravel, moving on to some motocross/ATV games, and finally went back to an old favorite, Need for Speed. Although I was super tempted to boot up Most Wanted again, I decided instead to pop Underground in the PS2 and review it. It's something I had attempted to do a few months back, but just stopped. I can say I got much farther in this time around, but still have never finished it, to which I'll be talking about later. Clearly, it's a racing game. If you've never heard of Need for Speed, you must not be into gaming in general, as there are a ton of games in the series. Underground directly follows Hot Pursuit 2, which happens to be one of my favorite games in the franchise. There's a lot of differences though. Where Hot Pursuit featured fast supercars driving around on a variety of tracks with cops hot on your tail, Underground takes place solely in a place known as Olympic City, at night, with cars you probably see every day, just overhauled into serious racing machines. The career mode is a bit more linear than Hot Pursuit as well. Here, after choosing one of 4 vehicles, you choose between a few races available, although there are times where you only have one option. Once you clear each race available, a new group will become available. Again, unless you're only given the one. Usually when that happens though, it's a special story progressing event, like a time trial to unlock a special visual mod or a tournament. The nice thing is that each race allows you to choose your desired difficulty level. You can start on hard, and if you have trouble, can just back out to the menu and restart on a lower level. The only downside to choosing lower challenge levels is that you'll earn less cash upon winning. Cash is simply used just for purchasing upgrades and trading out your vehicles. See, you can only own one car at a time. Whenever you switch vehicles, you either pay the difference or get a bit of a refund. All modifications that you had made to your vehicle carry over, whether it be performance or visual in nature. Once you purchase a mod, you can switch between your owned ones without having to pay any additional costs. So once you start getting into the upper echelons of upgrades, money will only be used if you want to switch between vehicles, unless you want to change up the look of your car a bit. And yes, you do need to work on the visual nature of your vehicle. You have a style meter, and the higher this is, the more points you'll get from a multiplier with the style points done during races. These are earned by doing things like getting air, power sliding, nearly missing with traffic, and so on. These style points, once the bar is filled, will earn you some new stuff to outfit your car with. Some races also require a specific style grade, so keep that in mind. So enough for the behind the scenes stuff. How is the racing? Well, it's street racing. You'll start online and have to outrace up to 3 opponents to the finish line in a variety of events, from standard circuit races to sprints, drift challenges, and drags. The only way to proceed in the game is to win. You can't move on if you get anything less than first place, which can be a bit harder than you might think. You can eventually purchase Nitro to get that quick speed boost, but unlike future games, it does not recharge during the race, so you'll need to be very careful when deciding to use it. There are of course shortcuts that may allow you to gain a second or two against your opponents, or not. Personally, I found that there were very few secret paths that were worth taking. Most of them had hazards like a small pillar that might just be jutting out from the wall that just begs to be smashed into, or sharp turns that will seriously slow you down. After a while, I pretty much gave up looking for these shortcuts, other than a few specific ones in which I had noticed an immediate benefit. Speaking of sharp turns, man, I suck at turning in this game. Or maybe it's not just me. I have a bad habit of turning a bit too late, smashing into a wall, and slingshotting between various obstacles before I'm able to regain control of my car, all while I lose the lead, or the leader gains more distance ahead. On some turns, I ended up just riding the wall through the turn to minimize my speed decreases. There are also some areas I absolutely hate, such as this tunnel that has pillars on the inside. Not so bad at first, but when you get to the serpentine area, avoiding these support beams is a nightmare. I swear at least once in a race that features these things, I smash into them. Yet the opposing racers have no problem navigating these troublesome areas. That's actually why I started struggling through some of the later races, forcing me to lower the difficulty to easy. Many of the opponents feel like they are racing on a rail, seemingly taking corners without losing any speed, whereas I'm struggling to slam on the brakes and turn without hitting anything. I take a turn at that speed and I start sliding uncontrollably. Sure, you can try drafting behind them, but then they'll just use their nitro to get away. And sure, you can try to push them into a wall or another car, but it doesn't always work. I've even been able to occasionally do a pit move on them, but it doesn't happen often. It just feels downright unfair at times. It doesn't help that one bad crash, which will probably happen, will take you out of the race since you will lose too much time. Usually after a crash, I'll just go ahead and restart the race. I've got about 25 races left out of 111, and I've spent probably close to an hour or two on one single race. When I look up a guide to see if I'm doing something wrong or if there's a specific vehicle I should have been using, they preface that race by saying, "This feels like an equivalent of a final boss fight in a racing game." Well, dang. No wonder why I'm doing awful. Let me talk about the two, special races. Drift and drag. Let's start with the drifting. You are the sole vehicle on the track and just need to swing your car around corners to power slide, gaining points. If you get close to the walls, you'll earn more points, signified by the score turning orange. Be careful though, as if you hit a wall, it will cancel your current drift. Also, if you go too slowly, the multiplier you'd have earned from gaining better drifts will reset back to 1. Personally, I enjoyed this race type and thought it to be the absolute easiest one in the group. But drag racing? As much as you would consider it to be somewhat easy, I absolutely hate it. The mechanics change in that you're forced to use manual transmission, which isn't a big deal to me. You have to rev up your engine and time your gear shifts to maximize your speed and acceleration. The game will both flash the needle and a light to signify when you should shift. You don't really need to control your car like you do in a normal race, but instead just press left or right to change lanes to avoid traffic or other obstacles. There are 3 ways to lose. The obvious don't get in first place, but also the other 2 ways that can also cause you not to reach first. Totaling your vehicle by smashing into something, and blowing your engine, done by redlining your engine for a few seconds. Luckily, these races only take about 30 seconds, and a lot of it is memorization, so you usually don't have to spend more than a few minutes attempting these if you struggle at them. As much as I like the nighttime city look, I will say that it gets repetitive. There's absolutely no variety from this. Yes, the tracks all take place throughout the city, but many elements are the same. Many tracks will pass through the same areas. For example, that first race that shows you the area under construction, be prepared to see that in what feels like half of the races. You'll recognize and possibly even memorize parts of the map. So even if the tracks do change, you might come to know Olympic City as well as your own hometown and know how to navigate it, if that makes sense. With the nighttime setting, the graphics are fairly dark but still yet bright, due to the streetlights, traffic headlights, and so on. The game also features that freshly wet look, like a storm just washed over the city. You don't have to worry about slick roads or anything, but I just feel that that's how it looks. The cars look fairly detailed, but no, they won't receive any physical damage from smashing into things. Of course, the CGI scenes look PS2 era, but that's not to say that they're bad, just par for the time the game was developed in. The audio, on the other hand, the soundtrack is probably the second best in the franchise, at least from the Need for Speed games I've played. Static X, Lost Prophets, Fuel, Story of the Year, Rob Zombie. It's a very rock-heavy soundtrack, although there are some techno and hip-hop tracks in there as well, although the hip-hop is typically reserved for post-race and menu songs. Techno and rock are what you'll probably have when racing, and I am most definitely not complaining. So 17 years later, is Need for Speed Underground worth playing? Absolutely. The racing is fairly solid, minus the unfair opponents laid in the career mode, but by then, who cares, you're already sucked in. There's plenty to do, and if you can get some friends to come over, it could be a fun night racing everyday cars and laughing when one of them crashes into a civilian car. Granted, I wouldn't say it's the best game in the series, but it's definitely solid. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.